Hey there, folks, and welcome out to the Single Player Podcast. I'm your one and only host, I'm 16-bit. I got a good show for this week because we're going to be talking about Blizzard and NetEase split, Yuji Naka is arrested, Volition becomes part of Gearbox, and more. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and I'll be with you in a bit. Alright folks, we're back, and now it's time to start the show with my favorite segment, your favorite segment, everyone in the world's favorite segment. It's time for the gaming forecast. So let's see what's coming out in the week of November 27th to December 3rd. Alright, on November 29th, you have just one game coming out. Soccer Story for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Stadia. Then on November 30th, you have just 4 games coming out. Gundam Evolution for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. Front Mission First Remake for Nintendo Switch. Sword of the Vagrant for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. And Warhammer 40k Darktide for Windows. Then on December 1st, you have 6 games coming out. Inscription for Nintendo Switch. River City Girls, releasing only in Japan for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. Romancing Saga Minstrel Song Remastered for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, iOS, and Android. Spirit Hunter Deathmark, releasing exclusively in Japan for Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 Retribution for Windows and PlayStation 4. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel Dawn of the Battle Royale Let's Go Go Rush, releasing exclusively in Japan on Nintendo Switch. Then on December 2nd, you have just 3 games coming out. The Callisto Protocol for Windows, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. Marvel's Midnight Suns for Windows, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. And Need for Speed Unbound for Windows, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. And that was your gaming forecast. Quite a lot of games coming out this week. Some that I'm definitely looking forward to. Gundam Evolution, Front Mission First Remake, River City Girls 2, Callisto Protocol. Yeah, there's quite a lot of interesting stuff there. If there's any games here that catches your fancy, please let me know down below. And, if you like any of the music that's played in this week's episode, links are in the description. And with that being said, let's move on to our first topic. Okay, so for our first story, we gotta talk about Blizzard because it appears they won't be able to sell games in China anymore. Yeah, so this past week, Blizzard put out a blog post saying, and I quote, Blizzard Entertainment and NetEase suspending game services in China. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. They said, and I quote, Blizzard Entertainment Inc. announced today that it will be suspending most Blizzard game services in mainland China due to the expiration of the current licensing agreements with NetEase Inc. on January 23rd, 2023. This includes WoW, Hearthstone, Warcraft 3 Reforged, Overwatch, the StarCraft series, Diablo 3, and Heroes of the Storm, and Diablo Immortal and Heroes of the Storm, sorry. Diablo Immortal co-development and publishing is covered under a separate agreement between the two companies. Blizzard Entertainment has had licensing agreements with NetEase since 2008, covering the publication of these Blizzard titles in China. The two parties have not reached a deal to renew the agreements that is consistent with Blizzard's operating principles and commits to players and employees, and the agreements are set to expire in January 2023. We will suspend new sales in the coming days, and Chinese players will be receiving details of how this will work soon. upcoming releases for WoW, Dragonflight, Hearthstone, March of the Lich King, and Season 2 of Overwatch 2 will proceed later this year. You know, it's times like these that I think and I realize I have no sympathy for Blizzard. None whatsoever. Because you know what? They were the ones that decided to kiss China's ass. They were the ones who suspended one of their players because he voiced his support for his homeland. Okay? That is unfortunately under Chinese rule. I have no sympathy for them. Okay? What's that old fraying? You mess with the bull, you get the horns? Well, there you go. Blizzard just got the horns. Now, they don't go into too much detail as to why they couldn't come up with an agreement. My guess, though, is probably because it has something to do with China's video game regulations. I covered this a couple of months ago, but China instituted all of these heavy regulations on gaming as to what time and like times and days that actually you're allowed to play games. Because remember, China, despite how much they've tried to convince everyone, they're still a communist country, okay? They try to convince everyone that they're not, that they're free and they're capitalistic. In reality, they are heavy communists, all right? So they've been dictating video game playing over there for the past few months. And because of that, it's had a huge impact on the Chinese gaming industry. And so I have to wonder, because of how many hours are put into these games, considering like WoW, like WoW is like there are people addicted to that game. All right, okay. I have to wonder if that has something to do with it. You know, maybe Blizzard wanted to get like special treatment because they know that their games require a lot of time and skill to kind of get through them. Now, what's interesting about this is that Simon Zhu, who is the CEO of NetEase, he put on LinkedIn basically a rant about Blizzard. It's actually pretty funny, and he said, and I quote, "As a gamer who spent that 10,000 hours in the world of Azeroth, StarCraft, and Overwatch, I feel so heartbroken as I will not longer have the access to my account and memories next year. One day when what has happened behind the scene could be told, developers and gamers will have a whole new level understanding of how much damage a jerk can make. Feel terrible for players who lived in those worlds." So yeah, he basically just called Blizzard a jerk. My God. You know, it's times like these that you just have to sit back, relax, and just enjoy the show. Remember that one line from the 2014 Godzilla? Let them fight? That's what you got to do with this. Just sit back, relax, and let NetEase and Blizzard tear into each other because it's funny as hell. Like I said, Blizzard gets what they deserve for kissing the ass of the Chinese communists, and I have no sympathy for them. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. Alright, next up, we gotta talk about Pokemon, because recently Scarlet and Violet came out, and it appears that the games are glitched to hell. Yeah, I've seen plenty of videos on Twitter of numerous glitches. We're talking really bad pop-up, environments just looking unfinished, characters looking just completely glitched to hell. I saw one where basically one of the characters, whenever they try to get on like the Pokemon bike, whatever it is, that, you know, the legendary Pokemon that turns into a motorcycle, like their arms would like and legs would like elong and such, like they look like Slender Man or something like that. Okay, like what is it, Pika Man? The glitched out Pikachu with like the human arms and legs. That's what it kind of reminds me of. And of course, there's been a massive debate over what has actually been causing these glitches. A lot of people are saying that it's because of the Switch hardware itself, that this wouldn't happen with much more powerful hardware and all that kind of stuff. And the way I see it is this: yes and no. Yes, I do agree that the Switch hardware desperately needs to be upgraded. Okay, look, the Switch was impressive when it came out. Alright, because graphically it was a little bit less powerful than the PS4 and the Xbox One, so a lot of games could be optimized for the Switch back then, but now it's kind of, it's aged poorly and like within like the last 2 years. Alright, here's the way I see it though. I don't think it's because of the Switch hardware, okay? It's because of poor optimization. You see, we've been having this problem with Game Freak for a long time. Their games on the Switch are poorly optimized. They look like shit. They're glitched to hell. It's been a huge problem. Remember, there were glitches when it came to Sword and Shield. Okay? 3 years ago. It's not because of the Switch hardware. It's because of Game Freak themselves. You see, Game Freak has unfortunately become really, really lazy with their releases. It feels like they don't really put too much effort into them. And the fact is that they not only do their environments look like they belong on the Wii. Like, no joke, Xenoblade Chronicles, the original Wii version, had better looking environments than the current crop of Pokemon games for the Switch. Alright? But you also have the fact that they're reusing assets. Ever since Sword and Shield, they have been reusing 3DS assets. Yeah, a lot of the non-new Pokemon that you've seen in the newer games are just simply reused assets from the 3DS. The fact of the matter is, it's less to do with the Switch's hardware and more to do with Game Freak's laziness. A lot of their newer games are completely half-assed, and it's because they know that they can basically put out anything and people will just buy it. Okay, I guarantee you, they could literally put out a bag of dog shit with the name Pokemon on it, and people will buy it. But just not even thinking. They'll just pay money for it just because it has the word Pokemon on it. This has been a problem with Game Freak for a while, and it's something that's greatly affected their releases. Okay, and the sad thing is that if you try to point this out on Twitter, people will go after you for this. They'll make up excuses for Game Freak. Oh, they're an independent studio. Oh, they don't have time for this. All this kind of stuff. They literally own a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Okay? I don't want to hear it about how they're an independent studio. I don't care. That's not an excuse. And the thing is, I'm actually a fan of Pokemon. I like the series. In fact, earlier this year, I bought Arceus. I played it on the podcast. I really liked the gameplay of it, but the graphics looked like shit. It looked half-assed. And this is the problem that Game Freak has been having for a long, long time. You see, I'm of the opinion that if you truly love something, you should be willing to criticize it because you want it to get better. You want it to remain at a certain level of quality. And if you just keep kissing the ass of creators and blindly consuming, they're just going to get complacent and they're just going to lose what made them special in the first place. I love Game Freak, I love Pokemon. However, I feel that their newer games are not up to the standards they had already set previously. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this.
Out here we entertain ourselves at home, so we got an Atari video game. There's so many different games to play. We especially like Space Invaders, zapping those little devils from outer space. It's fun, but personally I think the whole idea of creatures from outer space is a little far-fetched.
No other company offers you as many different video game cartridges as Atari.
Alright folks, we're back, and first up in our next round of stories, we gotta talk about Yuji Naka. Oh boy, some of you know exactly where I'm gonna go with this, but for those who don't know, it appears that he has been arrested. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. According to the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's Office, the co-creator of Sonic the Hedgehog has been arrested for his involvement in a insider trading case. According to them, while he was at Square-Enix, developing Balan Wonderworld, he had gotten word that a company called Aiming were working with Square on developing a Dragon Quest game. Of course, that being Dragon Quest Tact, the smartphone game. Apparently, because of this information, he bought 10,000 shares within Aiming, which is about 2.8 million yen, before any of this information was actually announced. Now, the thing is, he's not the only one who's apparently done this. Apparently, two other people, Taisuke Sasaki and Fumaki Suzuki, were both arrested, and actually their crime was even worse, because they both had, I think, about 162,000 shares each. So they did a little. So they bought more shares than him, but holy shit! There's something you never. I don't think I don't think I ever expected to hear that news, that Yuji Naka was arrested. Like, look, I know that he's a complete asshole. Most people who have worked with him have said that he is a complete asshole. He has his head firmly up his own ass and shit. Okay? But, like, I never expected him to do something just outright illegal. Granted, it is a white-collar crime. It's not like he robbed someone or anything like that. But still, it is pretty fucked up. My guess is that he probably thought that he could get away with it because he's Yuji Naka. He does that a lot. The dude will go around claiming that he created Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, he makes it sound like he was the sole creator, when in reality, it was other people. He only, like, was the lead programmer. Like, that's it. But he goes on and on about how he created the character and all that kind of stuff. Like, outside of programming, he only produced some of the later games, and, like, that was it. He didn't even direct any of them, or, like, write any of them. Hell, he's kind of responsible for the death of Sonic Extreme. You know, one of the only major Sonic game that was actually developed for the Saturn. Yeah, he's kind of responsible for its demise because the developers were going to use the Knights engine, and when he found that out, he had a massive shit fit and basically threatened Sega to leave the company if they didn't withdraw their permission to use the engine. So yeah, this dude has a massive ego, and it wouldn't surprise me if he basically did this thinking that, oh, he's gonna get away with it because I'm Yuji Naka, I co-created Sonic. Yeah, whatever, dude. Oh, and by the way, since we're on the topic, I just want to say, I recently tried playing Balan Wonderworld on the Switch. Holy shit is where people write about it. That game is a titanic pile of shit. Like, it doesn't just look bad, it plays terribly. I don't know what the fuck Square-Enix was thinking. I don't know why they thought that this would be, it was ready to be released. Just like, my god, it's so bad. It's so friggin' bad. Holy shit. And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if that's basically his final game, because I can't see him getting hired after this. You know, he's basically been, after the whole thing with, Naoto Oshima, where he basically blacked him out of a group photo of the development team for Sonic Adventure, it wouldn't surprise me if he's basically been entirely blacklisted from the industry. Don't be surprised if he doesn't come back to make another game. But anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our next story. Okay, so last week I talked about the whole Mick Gordon situation where he responded to Marty Stratton's open letter on Reddit a couple of years ago. Well, it appears that Bethesda has released an official statement on the entire thing. And it's very interesting. They put it on Twitter, and they said, and I quote, "The recent post by Mick Gordon both mischaracterized and misrepresented the team at id Software, the development of Doom Eternal, Marty Stratton, and Chad Mossholder, with a one-sided and unjust account of an irreparable professional relationship. We are aware of all the details and history in this matter and unequivocally support Marty, Chad, and the team at id Software. We reject the distortion of the truth and selective presentation of incomplete facts. We stand ready with full and complete documented evidence to disclose in an appropriate venue as needed. The statements posted online have incited harassment and threats of violence against Marty, Chad, and the id Software team. Any threats or harassment directed towards members of our teams will be met with swift and appropriate action to protect their health and safety. We remain incredibly proud of id's previous collaborations with Mick Gordon and ask that fans refrain from reaching conclusions based on his account and, more importantly, from attacking any of the individuals mentioned on either side, including Marty, Chad, or Mick. Now, obviously, this is a very short and, in a lot of cases, vague response, because Mick Gordon, like, his original post is like, it takes an hour to read. Okay, it's a massive piece that doesn't leave any sort of vagueness. Okay, it's very clear and concise and to the point as to what exactly happened. Whereas Bethesda here, it's very much it's your typical company statement. You know, doesn't go into too much detail. Just says that we stand by our people and we oppose the harassment and hatred our members have had. Okay, here's the thing that gets me though. They're saying that we reject the distortion of truth, and we stand ready with full and complete documented evidence. Okay, then drop them. Mick Gordon did. You read his original post. He puts clear evidence of his side of the story. If you have evidence supporting your side, then drop it. Show your receipts. They're obviously not going to. I guarantee you that this was probably a letter written by Bethesda's legal team. Okay? They probably don't have any evidence whatsoever, and if they do, it's probably the exact same shit that Mick Gordon has already released, and it further supports his side of the story. Okay? It is... Honestly, if Bethesda, if they really want to retain fan support, then you know what? They should have never said anything to begin with. All right? Like, that's the thing, is sometimes silence is golden. All right? You didn't have to release a statement about the entire thing. You could have, like, okay, maybe you could have just put the part about, like, okay, we don't support the harassment or threats of violence against our people. Okay, that's fine. But you didn't have to, like, just go out and say, well, we have evidence, okay, of our side. Okay, then drop that evidence. And if you don't show the evidence, then then really, your entire side of the story is complete bullshit. Seriously, honestly, I think Bethesda, at this point, the only thing they really can do is just take the L on this. Okay? You know, issue an apology to Mick Gordon. Okay? And just admit that you were wrong about the entire thing. Okay? Grow a fucking pair. Alright? Jesus Christ. And the thing is, I actually like Bethesda. I like id Software. I'm a huge fan of their work. But this shit like this, it irritates me, you know? But the real funny thing about it is that Mick Gordon actually responded to Bethesda, basically calling them liars, and posted a link to his Medium statement. And in doing so, he actually ratioed them. Yeah, Bethesda's post has like 15,000 likes, and Mick Gordon has like 39,000. You know, sometimes you just love watching a ratio. It's so beautiful. Absolute tasty. But anyway, I hope Mick Gordon gets the justice he deserves, because honestly, this entire situation is bullshit. He's a great composer. He doesn't deserve any of this garbage. And Bethesda should just set things right already. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. Alright, and for our next story, you guys might remember that a couple of months ago I told you about a survey that Embracer Group had released regarding the Legacy of Kain series. Well, we now have our response to the survey. That's right. So recently Embracer Group released their second quarter financial results, and it appears that they got some very good responses to the survey. Phil Rogers, the CEO of Embracer's 12th operative group, which includes Crystal Dynamics and Eidos, said, and I quote, "We wanted to gain a community perspective on what players are looking for should we revisit the land of Nosgoth and, of course, our iconic IP Legacy of Kain. In the past, we found that surveys typically get between 1,000 and 3,000 responses, but when we asked folk about Legacy of Kain, we received over 100,000 responses and 73,000 gamers completed it entirely. We saw the news of our survey shared across social media and press platforms and really felt this was a great way to reignite this passionate fan community with this legendary PC console game series. Rest assured, we hear you loudly and clearly and will continue to update you on the what-if possibilities ahead for Legacy of Kain in the future." Folks, that's what I like to hear. And you know what? I want to thank every single one of you who did the survey. I did it myself as well, and I'm really hoping that this means we will have a return to Legacy of Kain, because it's been far too long. It's been almost 20 years since the last Legacy of Kain game. I think it's about time we brought the series back. And let's hope they actually do the series justice and don't do what I think Volition did with friggin' Saints Row. Like, holy shit. Like, I'll talk about that later, but yeah, that game basically destroyed Volition. So let's hope they don't make that same mistake, and I'm pretty sure Embracer won't make that mistake. So anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
There's never been a game like Sega Saturn's Knights. Never been a game that's allowed you to fly, fluid and free, in real-time 3D. Never, not anywhere. But especially not on that other system. Simply because, with only one processor, it doesn't have the power to do it. Fly, plaything, fly. You're not ready. Stay up!
Alright folks, and we're back, and first up in our last round of stories, we got to talk about Embracer Group again. Now, as I mentioned before, they released their second quarter earnings report, and this time, however, we got to talk about Saints Row and Volition. So yeah, they put out a whole thing about, well, it's a section about Saints Row, and they said, and I quote, "The organic growth during the quarter, 35%, was as expected, primarily driven by new releases within PC console, in particular supported by the reboot of Saints Row, which was released in August 23rd. The reception of Saints Row did not meet the full expectations and left the fanbase partially polarized. The game development studio Volition has been working hard to improve the player experience. Financially, Saints Row has performed in line with management expectations in the quarter. Going forward, Volition will transition to become part of Gearbox, which has all the tools, including an experienced management team in the US, to create future success at Volition. This is the first internal group transfer where we transfer a major studio between operative groups, but it is not necessarily the last." Okay, so there are some things to take away from here, and the one thing that really got me is how it's written. Because they say things, because they mention how it did not meet the full expectations, and how it left the fan base partially polarized, but they say how it has performed in line with management's expectations in the quarter. And it comes across like me that basically it's just a nicer way of saying you done fucked up. Okay? That's what it comes across like corporate speak for you completely fucked up, and we're kind of punishing you for it without outright saying that you fucked up and we're punishing you for it. Okay? Because here's the thing, if they didn't screw up, all right, then why the hell are they being transitioned into Gearbox? All right? And they talk about how they're going to have an experienced management team in the US and all this kind of shit. It seems to me like, again, it's just a nicer way of saying you screwed up and we're forcing you into Gearbox because you need better management. So, you know what, folks? This is what you call karma. Because if you remember when they first announced this reboot, okay, fans weren't happy about it. They didn't like the direction it was going. And what happened? They decided to go after the fans. They called the fans toxic. They told them that, well, this isn't for you. Well, the original creators, they like these changes, so we're going forward with them. All right? They told the fan base to fuck off. Guess what happens when you tell the fan base that this to fuck off? This is what happens. So, you know what? There's a lesson to be learned here, and that is don't mess with the fans. All right? Don't tell the fans that this isn't for you. Don't make a game that the fans aren't going to like, because if you do that, they're not going to be there when your game comes out, and they're not going to give you money for it. This should be a lesson that every studio should pay attention to, but unfortunately, it's probably going to fall on deaf ears. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. Alright, and next up, you guys might remember a couple months ago I talked about a Streets of Rage adaptation. Well, we've got an update on it because it appears that Lionsgate has picked it up. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Lionsgate will in fact be producing the Streets of Rage movie alongside Sega. And it appears that we also have a writer, because it's going to be Derek Kolstad. Now, if you don't know who that name is, you'd best know his movies because he's written the entire John Wick trilogy. Yep, the writer of the John Wick movies is, of course, doing Streets of Rage. And it appears that he's actually really excited to do it. He said, and I quote, "When Dimitri first mentioned the idea of cracking a Streets of Rage movie, I was so immediately freaking in. And to play with Sega, the 10-year-old me is still grinning." So you know what? Here's the thing, okay? I think Sega, the fact that Sega is involved with this one, the same with Sonic, is a very good sign. Because the Sonic movies turned out incredibly well with Sega's involvement. And so, with them involved, and the fact that you have someone who is obviously a fan of the series getting involved in writing it, yeah, you know what? I have a lot of hope for this one, that it's actually going to turn out really, really good. Especially since, like I said, the Sonic movies did so well. Sega wants to keep that momentum going, so they're gonna damn well make sure that the Streets of Rage movie is just as good as Sonic. Sega has also proven something I've been saying for years, which is if you want a good movie adaptation of games, then hand it off to the fans. Because we've seen this countless times where people who don't like the IP at all, know absolutely nothing about it, they get their hands on it, and what happens? They fuck it up. Case in point, look at what happened to Halo. The people behind it had never played any of the games, knew nothing about the lore, and what we end up getting? One of the shittiest adaptations right next to Resident Evil. So yeah, I've got a lot of hope for Streets of Rage, and with that being said, let's move on to our next story. Alright, and for our last story, so it's only been a month since Bayonetta 3 came out, and it appears that Hideki Kamiya has already confirmed the existence of Bayonetta 4. Yeah. So recently he put out a tweet saying, and I quote, "I didn't think it was unexpected at all, but it seems that the ending of Bayo 3 wasn't conveyed correctly to everyone. So I think Bayo 4 will be an unexpected development. After all, when Bayo 4 comes out, I'm sure there will be people who say you added that as an afterthought, so I'll say it now." Yeah, he just basically outright and confirmed that Bayonetta 4 is in the works. It's crazy. Now, of course, I had to read this off of Eurogamer because, well, let's just say Hideki Kamiya blocked me years ago. I think I talked about this before. I've talked about it on Twitter, but I think I've mentioned it on the podcast. But he blocked me years ago because I said I was excited to play Bayonetta 2. And then he was like, "I didn't direct Bayonetta 2. Blocked." And that was it. I have no hard feelings against him, though, because I can't hate the guy. Come on. He makes good games. But now I'm wondering, okay, if he just blurted this right out, did he, like, sign any NDAs before? Or did he just... Or is this just so early in pre-production that it hasn't even been greenlit by Platinum yet? I have no idea. Or maybe he's just thinking about it. It's just kind of in his head, and he's thinking ideas for Bayonetta 4, or if there ever is a Bayonetta 4. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can kind of read this. If what he's saying is true, then they actually are working on Bayonetta 4 and he just spilled the beans on the whole project. We're just going to have to wait and see, and I guarantee you, considering how long it takes Platinum to make these games, we're probably not going to find out until the Switch is basically dead. Who knows? Maybe Nintendo's already moved on to an X system when they announced Bayonetta 4. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Young Bobby Engels has a problem. He needs to earn the respect of his peers. So he gets the special Sega Genesis fighting system. It comes with Streets of Rage 2. He saves $40. He gets more moves. He gets more control. Now things are pretty much okay.
I said chocolate chip. Say it. Say it. Sega!
All right, folks, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. And as you all know, tomorrow, of course, is Thanksgiving, at least in the U.S. I know Canada already had their Thanksgiving, and I know it doesn't really exist in anywhere outside of North America. And yeah, I'm totally going to be looking forward to it. Going to be hanging out because I get a 4-day weekend. Just hanging out with the family, eating some turkey, cranberry sauce, stuffing, all that good stuff. Playing some games, the usual. And with that being said, I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving weekend. I'll see you next week, and remember to keep gaming.